As a Christian, what should you think about 2020? Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 5 Minutes in Coffee. Even if you've been living under a rock, there's no way you could have not heard about everything that's happened in 2020, from all of the separation due to social distancing. We've been unable to attend our favorite spots such as restaurants, movies, and concerts. Some people have even had to miss milestone events such as graduations, wedding events, and some athletes even missing the final year of their eligibility. So you have to ask yourself, if you've been living faithfully as a Christian, doing every single thing that you can do, then why would God allow you to experience a year such as 2020? Again, I ask, why would God allow his faithful children to experience a year like this, a year that doesn't even allow us to meet with him consistently for worship? And I think that is the big point of 2020. It's not why is God allowing this to happen to us, it's more so what can we take from what God is putting before us. God is not some teacher who gives us irrelevant lessons. If it's happening, it's for a reason, and there's something we can take away from 2020. In my last episode, I talked about how we need to be careful in terms of how we measure our faith. And if you haven't heard that episode, then I encourage you to go back and listen to it. This year, however, is letting you know whether or not your faith actually measures up to God's expectations. Here are some things to consider from this year alone. With so many churches having to pause in-person worship, has your commitment to worshiping God increased, decreased, or stayed the same? The church that you worship at is only as strong as its members are. So if you find that your desire to worship God has dipped, then it may be time to reconnect with God and go deeper into prayer and go deeper in the scripture so that you can be someone who is encouraging within your church. When everyone was complaining about this year, did you join them or were you focused on God's blessings? And if you haven't seen any of God's blessings this year, then I encourage you to get out a pencil and paper and begin to write down the things that are blessings. And I'll help you start. Do you right now have at least one of these things? Do you have air to breathe? Because there are many people who are no longer breathing because of the events of this year. Do you have food? Do you have clothes? Do you have at least one person who loves you? Do you have a God who loves you unconditionally? I hope that helps your list. And continue to write those blessings down so that when others are complaining, you can find peace and God's love and his providence. Many people have experienced a loss this year, whether it's the loss of a loved one, loss of health, loss of income, whether it's through employment or a job. Many have experienced loss. As a Christian, have you tried to reach out to any of these individuals? Have you tried to assist them in whatever capacity that you could? If you can assist them, have you kept it in the forefront of your mind to display God's love to everyone despite what's going on, or have you been distracted by the events of this year? If you find that you've been distracted from God this year, maybe it's time to rearrange the way your day starts. Instead of rolling over in the morning when you wake up and looking at your phone, maybe take some time to give thanks to God so that your relationship with him can grow and you can be mindful of the things he'd have you to do. If you have suffered loss, have you allowed anyone to comfort you? Has your pride gotten in the way from asking others for assistance and letting them know what's going on? Has anger and jealousy consumed you because you feel like life is unfair at this moment? If you're experiencing any of these emotions, then it may be time to go to God in prayer and ask him to heal you physically, spiritually, and mentally. That way you can tell God how much this year has hurt you and that he can help you get through it and you can experience his awesome power. With this year being an election year, did you boast proudly about your candidate in a way that would put others down? Did you act ungodly because your political affiliation runs deep within you? If this was a struggle for you in this year, you need to find out, why does politics make me act ungodly? Why does it make me lose faith? Is it because you feel if your candidates don't get elected that God will be powerless to have his will done? Are you more concerned with getting your way than what God's will is? And not just the will that you want, but his actual will. There is nothing wrong with being engaged in politics. However, when it affects your faith, when it removes you out of God's love and into anger and hate and strife, there is the problem. Remember, the early Christians had to deal with the Roman government. which was no joke, yet God still prevailed. So my challenge to you going forward is, can you be the one individual who shows others how to be a Christian and engage in politics going forward, setting an example of love? Whatever happened to you in 2020, does it say that I am a Christian and I have grown stronger, or does it says that my faith isn't as strong as I thought it was? 2020 has been a test of faith for many. Would you give yourself a passing grade, or is your grade too low at this time? Are you comfortable bringing that grade to God in heaven, who is our teacher? Remember, nothing this year or next year in 2021 is promised, so be sure to have a passing grade for the Lord. With that being said, I want to share two things with you. There are multiple ways to support this podcast within the links below in the show notes. I'm really hoping to bring you awesome content in the future, and your support towards that goal would mean a lot to me. Lastly, if you find that this episode has been a blessing to you, I ask that you please just think of one person right now that you can share this episode with, so that this podcast can continue to grow. This is Jared with 5 Minutes in Coffee. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it. If you want to support the Christian Strength, please consider becoming a Patreon or making a donation towards the growth of the Christian Strength. Links are in the description. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 5 Minutes in Coffee, the Christian Strength.